You're listening to the Values and Leadership Podcast, where business leaders share their stories of purposeful impact and success.
Hello, and welcome to the Values and Leadership Podcast, the podcast for innovative leaders who want to apply new ways of doing things in work to grow themselves, leave a remarkable legacy, and have a purposeful impact in their lives and the lives of others. I am your host, Ahmed Aab. I invite corporate owners, corporate leaders, thought leaders, academics, and advisors who practice participative leadership and love to share their positive life and business experience, their sense of direction, sense of meaning, and how they challenge their thinking in growing their business and the people around them to their next best stage. Today, we have a global HR leader, an ideapreneur, an acclaimed global culture coach, speaker, trainer, and author of highly acclaimed culture transformation book, Plan C. In his capacity as the GM HR, the Himalaya Drug Company, and currently he's back to India in Castle United, I think, the company.
Cadila Pharmaceuticals.
Yes, Castle Pharmaceuticals. He's as well a chartered fellow CIPD. He is a fellow certified practitioner, human resource. We have Dr. Sanjeev with us today. He is our first guest from India, and I'm very happy to meet you, Dr. Sanjeev, today.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for a very beautiful introduction, and it's my pleasure to be with you in this particular podcast.
Dr. Sanjeev, he is very well professional. He is in industry. He's in the HR industry for the HR profession for the past 20 years. He even complemented that with a master's degree in labor laws and labor welfare. He's a fellow certified practitioner in human resources. He's a chartered fellow CIPD. So he is gathering a lot of backgrounds and experiences, whether as on the professional level, on the academic level, and on the practical level. So I'm expecting a great conversation today with Dr. Sanjeev, and I would like to know, Dr. Sanjeev, when you are trying to introduce new concepts like you are doing in your life, like organizational people strategy and driving business outcomes together with focusing on the talent and throughout the company. So how do you find that in work? So are people receptive, or there is conflicts, or there are rejection, or how do you deal with this culture?
So I think it's a very interesting perspective which you have asked, Ahmed. I think the journey has been, I will say, very, very enriching. The last more than 24 years, I've been in the corporate world and worked across various multinationals, Indian corporate houses. I worked in Indonesia, I worked in the UAE, and various global, you can say, organizations. And I think in the last, say, more than 20 years, there has been a kind of I will say, change in the way the business and the organization leaders are looking at the most important capital of their organization, which is human capital. Till now, the focus was mostly on the financial capital, on the technology capital, on the knowledge capital. But I think the realization is slowly getting into, and I think with the COVID happening, there is an absolute, you can say, a reality check to most of the organizational leaders across the world that if they have invested in their human capital, if they have invested in creating an ecosystem which inspire the performance and the commitment level of the employees and the team members who are working in the organization, whatever may be the size, whatever may be the kind of business they are in, the realization is that the way they're going to leverage the strength of the human capital, the way they're going to create that kind of, as I said, ecosystem which will inspire the higher performance and the commitment level of each and every team member of the organization. That is where you will have a sustainable success or a very, I will say, inconsistent performance. And I think this realization has definitely now more higher, and I'm quoting a lot of my research, which I have done across the organization, across the leaders, CEOs, and various business leaders. So the entire shift which I'm seeing is, Ahmed, is earlier the entire focus was, okay, we need to have a great strategy, we need to have a great plan, we need to have a great what you call financial muscle and strength. And if we execute that strategy, we will get a desired performance and output. Some of the organization focus was that, okay, we need to have a great backup plan. We need to have a risk management framework, strategy, and we will able to kind of sail through any kind of difficult situation. And I categorize these two type of mindset as Plan A and Plan B organization. Plan A organization, as I mentioned, believe in action. A stand for action. They always have a great strategy, great plan, and then they execute it. Mm-hmm. So that is the kind of mindset of the leadership there.
And this is the mainstream. And this is the mainstream.
Yeah, mostly, I will say 90% of the organization across the world, you will find Plan A. Again, coming from the research. And then there is a Plan B, which is primarily believe in that we need to have a great backup plan. B stand for backup. So we need to have a contingency plan. We need to have a preventive plan so that if my Plan A doesn't work, I can switch over to Plan B. Mm-hmm. But in the midst of these, both the Plan A and Plan B, which constitute mostly, I will say 90, 92, 93%, there is zero focus or very less focus on the most important element, which is, I call it Plan C, which is C stand for culture. What is culture? Culture is nothing but the behaviors which is a role model by the most influential people in the organization or any enterprise, even in a country. The supreme leader, whatever is the behavior, he's role modeling or she's role modeling, that becomes the culture of that particular enterprise. And that culture creates the environment, ecosystem, where all these Plan A and Plan B can either be successful or thrive, or they will not deliver the desired results. So the realization, and I can see the shift in the last 9-8 months, is that now there is a realization that companies or the leadership or the leaders who have focused more on the Plan C, and all the while, not because of the COVID, before COVID also, they were focusing on building the entire ecosystem, entire kind of a role modeling of right behaviors. That's where they've survived this entire COVID situation much more effectively than the leadership which only believed in Plan A and Plan B. Mm-hmm. So I think the way I have experienced in my various corporate stints is you always have resistance to change. Because the first reaction of any leadership or I will say organization is, oh, we are doing good. We don't have to change. There is no need to have any new things coming in. Let's continue the status quo. But then when you give them a lot of research-based data that how in the last, say, 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, companies which maintain the status quo, what is their performance level? How they have delivered in the last 10, 15 years if they have only focused on the status quo. And the data suggests that they have not done well. And the case in point, Ahmed, is if you take the Fortune 500 companies 30 years ago, can you find any of those companies today? So that's the question which need to be asked by everybody. And this is a data. This is not some kind of a fiction. This is absolutely factual information. Hardly there were companies which are still in there, which were there in Fortune 500 30 years ago. A lot of companies have vanished. Why? Because the age of the companies are getting reduced because of the very severe competition which is there in the environment. And it's not about now survival of the fittest. It is all about how I am becoming, as I said, ready or future ready rather to, you can say, manage these, you can say, volatility or complexity, uncertainty, which is there. And I think COVID is an example which has really given I will say, a huge jolt to the entire mindset of people, or especially the leaders, that just we are working in a one way will not give them the desired benefit and the results. And I think post-COVID, I think a lot of things will change, especially the way they are looking at the plan A and plan B. And I think most of the companies are now seriously looking at how to leverage their human capital by building that environment through the Plan C framework.
Perfect. I like when you mentioned that you are providing evidence-based about the Fortune
Yes.
500, where the list 30 years, the list now, so that this is very obvious to people that there is something that need to be changed, and there is something
Yes.
called disruption, and we have to disrupt ourselves. Plan A and Plan
Absolutely.
B was working well for years, maybe for 100 years to 100 years, and it was working fine. But now it's
Yes.
different, and we need to include something, as you mentioned, people strategy. So how do you, after you convince them with the data, how come you implement now? How can you include the people strategy and align it with the financial strategy and convince the management? And as you mentioned, this kind of resistance that you find even in the lower levels, in the middle management, even not even the VPs or something, but at the lower level, management level, is there kind of a fear and resistance? And how do you manage to embody that within the plan that you are aligning the people strategy with the financial strategy?
Excellent. So the approach I've always followed, Ahmed, is that I always first try to understand what are the business challenges, what are the business priorities, what are the business requirements. I don't have to always speak the HR language, because business guys will only understand business language. So as a HR professional, the first thing first for me is understand what are the nuances of the business. And I've worked across different businesses, Ahmed. I worked in FMCG, I worked in manufacturing, I worked in consumer durable, I worked in power, I worked in spirits, I worked in cosmetics, I worked in pharmaceutical. So I've worked across industry, and only one of the reason of my success has been that first thing first, I try to understand what the business stand for. What is the reason of existence of the business? What is the purpose of this business? What is the purpose of the organization leadership, right? And then I try to understand what are the key business priorities for the next 5 years, for example. What are the key business priorities? I mean, these are all specifics. These are not generic. So, for example, the organization want to increase the revenue and profitability by, say, 30% or 40% or 50%, right? They want to expand. They want to create new products. They want to create new markets. They want to create new portfolios, right? These are mostly the general business priorities which comes from the discussion and deliberation with the stakeholders. Once you have understood the business priorities, I think the next discussion will start happening between the stakeholder and the HR is what are their expectation from HR as an expert to help them to achieve those business priorities? What are their expectation in terms of the specific support they need in order to achieve those business priorities as per the timeline, as per the given targets, as per the plan which they have envisaged? And once this discussion starts, I think I've seen business guys and people, they start getting comfortable that this person is not pushing any HR jargon or HR specific agenda. He's trying here to be part of the team and work as a team member and provide his expertise. Like a finance guy will bring finance expertise, a marketing guy will bring marketing expertise, a sales guy will bring sales expertise. Similarly, HR guy brings a lot of expertise from the standpoint of how to leverage the strength of the human capital, right? How to create an environment which inspire passion, which inspire commitment, which inspire higher performance. Now, this expertise, once they start discussing in terms of the expectation and the support they need from HR function or human capital management function, in order to help them or enable them to achieve those business priorities, I think then we get into a specific, what you call, plan creation through this discussion. And then we start putting the specific, I will say, targets, specific timelines, specific areas of responsibilities, specific area of joint accountabilities, specific areas of how we will measure the success of the implementation of these initiatives. So everything becomes very, very specific, Ahmed. It's nothing is what you call fuzzy. Nothing is what you call in a kind of a fiction. Everything is in black and white on the table. And once everybody is aligned that yes, this is what we need for this year, then next year, and then next year, at least we have a picture of next 2 to 3 years, very, very clear. And
So
then we get into.
So you co-create together. I mean, HR with business, you co-create together.
Yes, yes. That has been one of the reason of the success of these plans, because it has been co-created. It has never been done in a cabin or in a meeting room just by HR guys. No, then you will never be successful, because then people, the business will not understand what is this entire plan is all about. The most important part of any ancillary function or any enabling function, and HR is one of the enabling function, right? Like supply chain, like finance, like your you can say service functions. All these functions needs to service to business. Business is their internal customer. Business is their real customer. So like any customer will be happy if we give to the customer the thing he wants or she wants. He will not be happy if you give him, okay, this is only available, you take it or leave it. Then customer will never come back to you. Same approach we have to follow while building this co-creation of the strategy or the plan or the entire specific action plan. And once you start speaking their language, once you start listening to them, once you start building that kind of a trust with them, it is followed by the reciprocation. They also start trusting you. They also start listening to you. They also understand. And then we get into the specifics. Then when we do the goal setting, Ahmed, then what we do, like they have articulated what are their expectations from HR. HR in reverse will ask them, if we have to deliver you these expected, you can say, deliverables, these are my expectation from business to support HR to deliver. So ultimately, their expectation is my goal, my expectation become their goals. And we co-create the goals. These are now specifics for say 2021 or 2022 or 2023 or 2024. The goals are co-created with a joint accountability. Similarly, supply chain will say, okay, if you have to deliver to the business this much, this is my expectation. Okay, if I have to deliver you this, I have this expectation from you. What we call SLA, service level agreements, right? The service level agreement is mutual. It is never one-sided. So if they want the talent to be hired in say 30 days, these are the expectations from the business to get those processes completed by X minus whatever days. Yeah, if the performance management has to improve the performance of the organization by this percentage, then the business needs to also do the entire process in letter and spirit in the most robust manner. So basically, what I'm trying to say, Ahmed, is it's not a rocket science. It's a very, very I will say, very focused approach towards building stakeholder alignment, creating joint accountability, co-creating goals, co-creating the entire, as I said, expectation matrix, and then you start measuring it. So then when you sit in your monthly review, you're not doing an operational review. You're doing the review of how we are doing on those joint accountabilities, how we are doing on those joint targets which we have decided for ourselves as a team. And then there is no blame game happening between business versus HR, HR versus business, that you have not supported me and I was expecting something else and you were delivering something else. That all those, I will say, unproductive discussion get arrested. I'm not saying it will create an ideal environment. No, there will be still a discussion. There will be still some level of debate and some level of blame game as well. But I think slowly, once we start doing this in a much more robust manner, Amber, I think we will create a no blame culture. I call it no blame culture, that there is no blame happening. We are blaming nobody because we are a team. We have already discussed everything. We have discussed the joint accountability. We have discussed the SLAs, service level agreements between us. We have discussed what we are going to deliver to each other. And then where is the room for any blame for that matter? And I think this is the foundation of Plan C. This is the foundation of creating a Plan C for the organization, because you're creating a culture of joint accountability. You're creating a culture of joint ownership. You're creating a culture of co-creating goals. You're creating a culture of co-creating your priorities. You're creating a culture of performing together, winning together, and achieving together. So once the leadership team does this, obviously the message goes down the line. All the people at the top are aligned. So we cannot have different goals at the middle level or at the junior level. So everybody will have the same cascading of the goals, joint accountabilities, joint ownership, co-creation of the strategy, and that is how as I said, the culture cascade down to the organization. Last person in the organization understand, everybody at the top is aligned. We cannot have politics. We cannot have power centers, while there will be, but still a lot of things by this approach gets addressed. And I think that's my experience in different, I will say, maturity, because different organizations at different maturity level. If it is at a basic level, you have to address at a basic level. If it is at a middle level, then you have to address at a middle level. If it is at a very mature level, then you have to talk it in a very, very strategic manner. You don't have to talk it basic. So it is all about where the organization is, and that you can do through various tools. There are a lot of tools available by which you can do the assessment where the organization is today. Whether it is your Pulse survey, whether it is employee engagement survey, culture audit, culture tools. There are a lot of tools available to assess what is my current level of organization. Where are we in terms of our maturity, in terms of our, as I said, the way we co-create our goals, the way we co-create our priorities and strategies. And once you understood that entire data point, and obviously through this kind of a tool, you can get a lot of insights. And that insight can again present it to the management that, okay, see, this is what is being coming from the employee. This is what the employee feels. This is how the employee perceives. And these are all data which has to be accepted on face value. You cannot debate that, because of this reason, this data is low or score is low. No, data is data. We can start working on the data rather than questioning the credibility of the data. So this is also one of the way I have always provided insights. I always started with the journey in any organization with a employee engagement or a pulse survey or a culture audit, so that we talk about data and we don't talk about feelings. I feel that the organization is good, or I feel the organization is not good. No, the feeling is very subjective. The data is very objective. Data speaks. So like when we try to create a new product, we always take consumer insights. We always do consumer research. Same way, if you're doing something in the organization, you have to have employee insights and employee research. Same approach.
Great. This is
then you can create a very good product. Then you can create a very good product for the customer, which is your employees at the organization.
Great. I like the approach. Very detailed and very convincing. And it worked. It worked for you in different industries. And this is the most important thing.
It works. And that is what I've also highlighted in my book, Plan C, which is doing very well. today only, I think in the LinkedIn, it has come as one of the top 5 books which has been recommended for 2021, along with very renowned authors and bestsellers. Just now in LinkedIn, it has been kind of come as the top 5 books.
Great.
For 2021.
Yeah, as much as you mentioned now, it has a very valuable information. It gives hope to people across the organization that they can have a no blame culture and
Yes.
have their voice heard and
Yes.
feel trust all over the place.
Yes.
Yes, as you said,
Yes.
there will be power centers and but it will be lower voices, and even people, they are not going to allow it to be nurtured like before or exist.
Ec-
No, they will feel
Absolutely.
you will feel the feeling of ownership, which you are
Yes.
trying to let everybody feel it and act upon it, and
Absolutely.
you include the voice through surveys, through employee engagement, through pulse surveys. So you are ensuring that everybody is on the go with you, and they are following the same thoughts that you had in the beginning. No, now it turned into action, and everybody
Abs-
is online.
Absolutely, Arvind. Absolutely. Because, and then you need to keep doing this. So
Hmm.
every 1.5 years, 2 years, we should do these surveys, these audits, so that we can see the progress also. All the action which you have taken, has it improved the perception scores? Has it improved those culture audit, pointers, or it is status quo? So
Great.
if it is status quo, then obviously you have to again rework and revisit your plan and see that where you have to do the course correction, because at times, depending upon the type of organization, size of the organization, culture of the organization, and there is a culture which is specific to the country and specific to the region and specific to the entire society. So that is also because culture is not created only in the organization. Culture is deep rooted as part of your upbringing. Culture is nothing but your belief system. Culture is nothing but your value system. So everything is, this is a very, I will say, very dynamic and very complicated element when we talk about culture. So there's a culture which organization has, there's a culture which employee has because of his upbringing, there is a culture which is the country has because of the country value system and the ethos. So there is a, I will say, interplay of all these elements. And you have to bring, as I said, harmony. You have to bring uniformity. You have to bring a lot of coexistence of each and every element, whichever is helping in the in the high performance of the organization, whichever way.
Perfect. I really thank you for mentioning all of this kind of culture, the upbringing and the national culture, and how we need to make a coherent blend. Yes,
Blended. Yeah.
Yes, great. I like the word blended. It's and you mentioned that in your LinkedIn profile as well, blending the needs of employees with the mission and the values of the organization
Yes.
through strong
Yes.
communication and interpersonal relation. This is exactly what you quote in your in your LinkedIn profile.
No, absolutely. I believe very strongly in this. Yeah.
Yeah. I had 2 more questions, and I would like to get like in 5 minutes to have these 2 questions. The
Sure.
first one.
No problem.
In business, we are used to hear these words: top line, bottom line. But now
Yes.
Dr. Sanjeev has a new term, middle line. Can you please
Yes.
share with us?
No, it's a very important term, Ahmed, and I think, and I've been into various global seminars before COVID. I was in Budapest, Berlin, on all those global conferences, and in the midst of CEOs and CXOs sitting there, I asked them, okay, what is top line? Everybody said, oh, this is what you're asking is very basic. It's all business revenues, everything. I said, what is bottom line? Everybody said, yeah, it's all about profitability and your the kind of profit you achieve. I said, now tell me what is middle line? And everybody was guessing. Everybody was guessing. And I said, this is the tragedy of this entire last century, that entire organization, countries, the leadership, all were obsessed about top line and bottom line. But the middle line is what connects top line and bottom line. Like in a body, and I'll give you a metaphor of a body. Your brain is your top line, which thinks, which strategize. Your body is your bottom line, because it helps you in achieving that strategy. But the middle line is your heart, your soul. Now, if your heart is pure, your soul is pure, then it helps your brain to work very effectively. It helps your body to work very effectively. So that is a metaphor. Similarly, the middle line is your value system, your belief system, your culture. Culture is your middle line. So if your middle line is strong, Ahmed, your top line and bottom line is bound to be sustainable and you will achieve. But if your middle line is weak, if your heart is weak, if your soul is weak, even if you have a great brain and a great body, you will not survive. Why? Because you will have anytime heart attack because of your weak heart. So that's where the middle line is. So the entire point which I'm making in Plan C with this term middle line is that the leadership has a very, very important task in hand. And I'm not talking about the organization, I'm talking about countries, I'm talking about political leaders as well, that we should start focusing on middle line. We need to start nurturing the values of the country, the organization, the enterprise, the startups. We need to look at what will help, what are the behaviors, what are those specific non-negotiable belief system, which I call values, will help us to move from where we are today to our next level of growth. And only the middle line can take you there. The top line obsession will only give you incremental benefit. The bottom line obsession can only give you incremental benefit. And I did some kind of a what you call thumb rule research that last entire century, because of the top line and bottom line obsession, the opportunity loss, if you calculate the entire financial element of the opportunity we lost because of only focusing on top line and bottom line, is in trillions of dollars. Trillions of dollars. So that's the kind of opportunity we have lost. We have never calculated that. No balance sheet calculate the benefit of middle line. No balance sheet talks about the benefit of the culture. We never measure it. And as we are not measuring it, we are missing the point. So that is the very, very important element, that we need to strengthen our middle line. And if our middle line becomes strengthened, rest assured, top line and bottom line will be sustainable, not vice versa. So Plan C can help Plan A and B to work, but Plan A and Plan B will not ensure Plan C to get delivered.
Great illustration. I like this. When you focus on the middle line, it will nurture and will flourish the bottom line and the end line, definitely. But the vice versa is not correct.
It's a linkage. As I said, gave you the body example.
Yeah.
If you have a great brain and great body, doesn't mean that you will be very, very having very high what you call longevity. No, your high longevity is because of your good heart, healthy heart, and healthy soul.
True.
As simple as that.
Agree. Last question, and this is a personal question.
No problem.
What's the biggest personal shift that has come to you during your work?
Personal shift.
Yes.
And when you say work, you're talking about my last 24 years, right?
Yeah,
everything.
What's the biggest personal shift?
I think biggest shift which I think I have achieved as far as my personal sphere is concerned is the entire I will say idea of growing on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And I attribute this to the practice of reflection and introspection. So these are the two practices which I have developed over the last so many years, that I reflect upon when in the evening, 15 minutes, did I leverage my strength in the entire 10, 12 hours of working which I did? Strengths. And second, did I leverage my values? Or I compromise my values? So I don't compromise my values. So I always reflect on this and then introspect that what I am going to do tomorrow to ensure that I leverage maximum of my strength and maximum of my values at my workplace, at my personal space, so that I continue to nurture, continue to nourish, continue to cherish my strengths and my values. Because wherever I will reach tomorrow and today compared to yesterday is because of my strengths and because of my values. That doesn't mean I don't have areas of improvement, but areas of improvement has to be acquired. Strength is within me. It is already there. I need to just, as I said, identify those strengths and keep, as I said, nurturing it, keep nourishing it, and I will feel more positive. I'll feel more, as I said, assured, reassured, and that is the reason. If you see, in the last so many years, I have acquired qualification. I'm doing everything every year, something which leverage my strength. I've done my doctorate at 42. I've done my chartered fellowship. I've done my Australian Human Resource Institute. I wrote the book. I have 4 poetry books already published. So I write poetries in my free time. So the creativity, writing, speaking, like I'm interacting with you, Ahmed, that is also one of my strengths. And I feel like sharing my experience, feel like sharing my perspectives, because that will help a lot of people to also reflect and introspect. After listening to our podcast, obviously they will be also thinking, oh, there's something called middle line, there's something called plan C, there's something called co-creation of goals, co-creation of strategies. And I think that is, only one of the most important practice and a very simple practice by which you can continue to grow and
Perfect.
continue to be successful.
Great answer.
That's my 2021 message.
Yeah. It's a lifelong. I think it's a lifelong message. And your answer, it prompted a further question. I did not plan it, but I have to ask it because it's important for everyone. You said you want to grow your strength and your values, and in any day you make reflection and try to better your values more. So let's say if you face a day or days where you have a challenge to your values, how come you can you give an example of one day that the ethics, I mean the society values, try to compromise yours, and you find a way to go out of it in your work, in your professional work? Can you mention one example?
Yeah. So, for example, there are situations where you have to either speak something which you are not convinced, which is a management line, or something which you felt is not done fairly. Because I always believe in fairness. There is nothing called right and wrong. There is something called fair. So in that situation, I will definitely stood my neck out, even if there is a repercussion on my what you call professional continuity in the organization or in the situation. I will definitely take the stand, because that is my, as I said, non-negotiability of my value. Even if you have to resign, I have resigned, stating that I don't believe in the philosophy of what you are telling me, because it is absolutely in disconnect to my belief system. To an extent, I've resigned. That's the extreme one can do. That okay, I don't think I will negotiate on my values, and because of that reason, I'm resigning. So I've resigned in a situation. So that is give me always a kind of assurance that it's not all about compromising. It's not all about getting salary next day. It is all about what is the worth of your value. Is it a worth the salary? Is it the worth a kind of a promotion? Is it a worth a title? Is it a worth a position? Or is it a worth which help you to see yourself in the mirror every day with a lot of confidence that you have not negotiated your values? And this is nothing called idealism. This is something I call realism, because if you're not able to face yourself in the mirror, I don't think you will ever be able to face the world. As simple as that. So for me, this is most important aspect. And most of the people who would be listening to this podcast would have gone through this situation. But the point is, what is the decision you have taken at that point of time? What you call moment of weakness or moment of strength or moment of vulnerability. But I think the point here is, if you are absolutely as honest to your values and your belief system, I think opportunity will come and go. But you will always remember the day you have not negotiated with your value and belief system.
Perfect. Great. I like that you have a work view, not only a self view or world view. You have a work view. You have to stick to something that's
Yes.
yeah,
What is fair is fair. Yeah.
Yes.
Whatever is fair is fair. Whatever. So my philosophy, Ahmed, if I have to sum up, whatever is good for me is good for others. Whatever is not good for me is not good for others. Simple.
Great. Great. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, for all the insights and all the middle line and the ideapreneurs that you shared with us today. Plan C is a great plan for people who want to grow, who want to have continual growth. So thank you for sharing all of this wisdom. And
thank you, Ahmed, for organizing this very, very, I will say, heartfelt discussion. I think I never felt that we are having some kind of a what you call podcast. It felt like that I'm having a chat with a professional, a fellow human being who is very, very honest, who is very, very having a very larger motive to spread the what you call good practices, good thought process, good perspectives across the world. And I think you have chosen this medium of podcast to share a lot of these what you call practical ideas and ideas which people believe in across the world. And I think I'm so glad that on a New Year Eve, we decided to have this podcast. And I think from this podcast, a lot of New Year messages for 2021 is going to all the audience of yours. And I wish all of them, entire listeners of yours, as well as people, their near and dear ones, abundant of joy and happiness and great health, and continue to be successful through having your own plan C.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, and I'm happy to join you in the last day in this year, and hopefully we can meet next year, inshallah, in another prospects, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Ahmed. All the best to you, and wishing you a great new year.
Thank you very much.